2013 Organic Turf and Soil Trials with Dr. Elaine Ingham, Chief Scientist at the Rodale Institute in Pennsylvania.
This is this year's turf trial that we're doing here at Rodale Institute, just outside of Kutztown in Pennsylvania, working with James Sotillo. We've been investigating the effects of fertilizer, compost teas, no treatments on turf. So last year we showed very clearly that the turf, especially the organisms and the root growth beneath that turf, was very significantly impacted in a negative way where we put on the inorganic fertilizer. Where we put on the compost tea, the roots went down through all of the soil. In fact, when we took out the turf where the compost tea had been put last year, all of the soil came out of the beds attached to those root systems. Not the case where we put on the inorganic fertilizer. So this year, repeating the experiment slightly differently. Always have to be expanding what we're working on. So this year we have beds where we have control treatments, where half of the bed is a meadow mix of wildflowers, the other half is the turf. So we're repeating what we did last year and adding some new parts to that, to the research that's being done here. So on the controls and randomly assigned here, the controls have just had water put onto the turf, and you can see where the sod went on, you can see where the seeds were put in. That's just water going in there. Now here's one of our fertilizer beds, and so the fertilizer that was used on the turf was recommended levels of weed and feed, so that's what went onto the turf. On the other side we put an inorganic fertilizer that's more appropriate for the garden, for the wildflower species. So the only thing different between the fertilizer and the control is here the water had the fertilizer in it, or it was put on as a solid in the same amount of water put on the turf as over in the control. Now here's a compost tea treatment. The only difference between this bed and the control or the fertilizer treatment is instead of the fertilizer, this got compost tea. So we are taking samples of the compost tea so you can see an example of what that compost tea looks like. It was applied here at about half a gallon per 4 foot by 4 foot square area. So the turf got the compost tea, the wildflower mix got the compost tea, same amount of water total put on here as in the chemical, the fertilizer treatment, as compared to the control treatment. So replicated 3 times. We will be taking measurements of how far down do the roots grow, what are the kinds of weed problems that we have, what are the diseases, what's the fertility of the grass look like. So come the whole season, as the season goes along, we'll be able to show what's the effect of the inorganic fertilizers, the compost tea, where we know the compost tea has the organisms in it that it needs to have. So that's it in a nutshell, and we'll be reporting back through the season on what we see.